You're listening to the official Reformed Stoic podcast, covering politics, philosophy, theology, conspiracy theories. I'm ready to get to the bottom of this life. Are you? Join Wolfgang, Sketty Squad, Purity Gang, as we strive to take dominion over this dying planet. I am Reformed Stoic, and this is my podcast. Oh, yeah. I've had today is sugar. Let's go. Trust the glug. All right, my friends. I was a little bit late getting the show together for you today. Mic check. Let's go. The mic's freaking quiet, but not anymore. All right. I was a little bit late getting the show together for you guys today, but I knew last night I wanted to go over Ukraine and Russia. This war has been a thing for a while now. I figure it's good to check in on it every couple of weeks, especially as I hear things happening. And then another topic that I believe we've gone over before was declining birth rate. Maybe we can get a different perspective on that today. Let's go. I really want to read lots of comments from the comment section. I made sure there was comment sections on all of the videos and articles I pulled up for that. And then we'll watch a video on sanctification. Nothing really special today, but it is what we make it, baby. We're going to fake it till we make it. Let's go. That graphic makes me squirt. Real. Okay, then. Well, enough dilly-dallying around. Let's get to the news segment. You're listening to the Reformed Stoic news segment. Let's go. All right, friendos, let's make it happen, Captain. So first we got our little buddies at CNN. Officials from 18 Russian districts call for Putin to resign. Wow, literally Putler. Time to resign, buddy.
In Russia, a sign that frustration with Vladimir Putin and his unprovoked invasion is growing. Deputies from 18 municipal districts in Moscow and St. Petersburg have now signed a petition demanding Putin's resignation, calling his actions, quote, detrimental to Russia's and its citizens' future. CNN's Fred Plakin joins us. He's following the story from Berlin. Fred, this seems like a very serious and very rare rebuke from these officials.
Hi, Anna. I would certainly say that it's very rare, and it certainly is something that definitely is noteworthy as well, especially if you look at the state of the opposition in Russia right now, where many opposition officials, quite frankly, are in jail, have been sidelined, or have been exiled. Also, of course, the state of the Russian free media as well is one that is also dire. So just in that light, this is certainly something that is definitely noteworthy. One of the things that we do have to keep in mind that these are local officials, they're fairly low-level officials, and there's really not many of them who have signed this petition, but the fact that this is being done publicly at all is certainly something that is definitely noteworthy. And if you speak to some of the folks, Russian officials, if you speak also to some of the people in Kremlin-controlled media, you do really get a sense that there is a very muted, very difficult feeling there right now as this Ukrainian counteroffensive rolls on. What the Russians have been saying is they've been calling this a reorganization of Russian forces, but you do hear some pretty critical voices also, especially among people who are very close to Vladimir Putin and who have been supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine as well. You look at, for instance, Chechen strongman Ramzan Kadyrov. He came out and he was absolutely angry, saying that mistakes had been made and that if things don't change, that he would take it up with the top leadership of Russia, meaning, of course, Vladimir Putin himself. So you do get the sense right now that Russia is hurting. They realize that it's difficult times that they're on right now. And certainly right now you can tell that they see that the operation that they're doing in Ukraine is definitely in a lot of trouble at the moment, Anna.
Although it seems that the Russian president is in denial, at least what he is vocalizing to his people there. Fred Plakin, thank you for that reporting. Let's bring in retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. He's a CNN military analyst. And Colonel, Ukraine has now recaptured, I should say, well more than 1,000 square miles just in the last couple of weeks, according to Ukrainian officials. And I just want to point out on the map here, it's kind of up in this eastern region around Kharkiv. That's where Melissa Bell was. We also know Kherson has had some fighting and some gains by Ukrainians as well. What has changed? Why is this counteroffensive so successful?
Well, this is a huge deal, Anna, and the reason that this counteroffensive is so successful is because the Ukrainians have been able to take advantage of several things. One of them is the weapons that they've gotten from the West. The U.S. and other nations, especially NATO nations, have been able to deploy weapons very quickly, and they've used these weapons particularly in this area right here. Like you were pointing out, the Kharkiv region, Anna, this is the area where a lot of that has happened. They have also used some of them here down south, but the key thing to note about these areas is that this is really protecting Ukraine's second largest city. And the more that the Ukrainians can move forward in this direction and push the Russians out, the more likely the Ukrainians are to keep this territory and the less likely it is for the Russians to actually retake the territory.
Strategically, how important or crucial is this specific region?
So it is incredibly important, and you know, if you look at this this area right here, so everything in Ukraine is basically divided by this river, the Dnipro River, running right through the middle of the country. Everything to the east.
Why do chuds not accept CNN as real news? Oh my gosh, Chud, let me guess, you want to watch Alex Jones? Chud alert.
Is much easier, or at least was much easier for Russia to gain a hold of, because when they first started this, they were basically moving like this. They were moving into Ukraine from Russia. But they were unable to prosecute their advantage this way. And what this means is this area right here, the area around Kharkiv, and then this area down in through the eastern part, this area is so important from a resources standpoint, from an industrial standpoint, and it is in essence, with the exception of the agricultural regions which cover all of this area, the most important part of Ukraine from an economic standpoint.
I remember earlier when this invasion began, we talked about how Ukraine might have had the fighting spirit in a much greater amount than Russia, but that Russia had the numbers. However, that seems to have flipped. Russia says Ukrainian forces outnumbered them by 8 times in the counteroffensive in the east, although I don't think Russia has the same fighting spirit. So when I say it's flipped, I'm just talking about the numbers. Do you see this as a tipping point? Are you confident Ukraine will be able to hold on to this territory they regained?
I think they can do it. Of course, there are a lot of things that have to happen. So let's take a look at the Northeast in detail, Anna. And what you have is the area around Kharkiv, which is right over here. And then you have where Melissa was in Kupiansk, which is right here, right on the line between, right now, between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians were able to move in this direction. This is the Russian border right here. The Ukrainians can keep this if they continue to get the weapons from the West, and if the Russians continue to have supply chain failures. And if that continues to happen, then I'm reasonably confident the Ukrainians can keep this area.
Okay, Colonel Cedric Leighton, it's good to get this update. Thank you so much for offering your expertise and your insights.
Oh, you guys, we're like smack dab. We're just about smack dab in the middle of September. Not quite to the halfway point yet. I don't know what it is about this month, guys. Hopefully October's good. We're going to have to make October good. I watched Friday the 13th Part 6 last night. Dude, so I've watched a few people rank the Friday the 13th movies. I gotta say, man, I think number 3 is my favorite so far. And it's random. Like, most people say that 3 wasn't one of the better ones, but I don't know. I liked the little, like, incel plot. There was the guy that, like, pranked people, and he, like, pretended he was dying, and then later he was dying, and they thought he was pretending. Something about that cabin they were in was kind of cozy. First one where Jason gets his mask. He starts without the mask, then gets the mask. I think 3 is the best for me. 4 is, like, one of the fan favorites. I liked the ending of that one. But like I said, there's this whole Friday the 13th formula where the middle of the movie is always like everybody getting killed off one by one. Eventually, Jason throws a dead body through the window. Eventually, somebody finds all the dead bodies. It's got that same formula in every movie, bro. And it just starts to get kind of lame, man. I'm going to wait a couple of days before I watch number 7. I mean, I don't want to say it gets kind of lame, but it's kind of a rough marathon, dude. I don't really think these movies are like that great. I don't think they're that great, dude. But 3 was the most memorable for me. Number 7 might be one of my favorites too. That's the one with the psychic chick. It's like a Carrie ripoff. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with that. I'm kind of glad I'm getting this out of the way before Halloween because I want to watch like all the classics, man. Oh, is anybody else burnt out on this year, bro? Like, man, oh man, shit's just kind of, I don't know how to label it, but we just got to keep on trucking, buddies. A little bit worn out over here. Make sure those deputies stay out of tall buildings and away from windows. Very brave to speak out. I salute you. So good to see Russians finally starting to stand up to all this. I pray it spreads. The world needs some brave Russians to stand up for what is right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Yeah, September went down the shitter. I'm barely keeping my workouts going. I feel like it's like a battle between working out pretty hard and then maybe my diet's kind of stupid. It's like the same thing it always is whenever I try this durian rider high carb diet. Like, I just can't cut out the fat. I never really try the diet because I just, like, late at night I start eating peanut butter and crackers and I feel like I can't stop it, dude. It's probably the weed. I get intense munchies and I just feel like carbs do not fill me up. Fat is what fills me up. So I basically just end up eating extra carbs and then putting fat on top of it. And I don't know, man. On paper, I'm in pretty good shape, but I think my diet needs work. I might just have to get back to what I was eating before. These 18 deputies have warranted my respect for their courage and selflessness of standing up to Putin and his Kremlin gremlins. They are examples of what Russia and Russians can be, a peaceful, democratic superpower. Yeah, I feel like Russia's going to get some democracy. I was on 4chan asking people to make predictions for what's going to happen, and it kind of went both ways. Some people say that, like, Europe is going to be stronger and United States is on the way to a collapse. People said all kinds of things, dude. Some people said, like, things are about to get, like, nutty crazy and World War III is coming and we're all going to freaking die. So I wouldn't hang off of what people on 4chan say. We just got to keep going, chuds. Dude, sometimes I make shill threads and pull where I'm like, listen up, chuds, and listen good. The future is female, and you're going to have to get used to it, chuds. I kind of love saying chud, dude. I love all memes. Like, memes that are just meant to trigger anybody. I don't really care, like, what political side it's geared toward. We like memes around here. All right. Ukrainian forces reclaim territory as Russian troops retreat.
It looks like it's developing into a major turning point in the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian forces have been routing the Russians in a key sector in the east of that country where the Russians had gained ground over the past several months. They've sent them just heading for the high grass, just routing Russian troops and taking back significant territory. Russia is retaliating now with new attacks on critical infrastructure, including power grids. ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burge joins me live from Kiev, Ukraine. Tom, this has just been astonishing to watch at a distance through Twitter. You're there. Well, what does it feel like there? Are people, I imagine they're very heartened by this. And what is the significance of it?
It's a huge moment, Terry. There's no doubt about that. We've just had word from Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister now saying that Ukrainian forces have captured more than 2,000 square miles in just the past 11 days. We've just met a Ukrainian MP who gets briefed on military matters, and she's telling us that we can expect more Ukrainian victories in the coming days because the Ukrainians are pushing in the south. They're claiming today that they've cut off Russian troops to the west of the large Dnipro River near the city of Kherson, which is a key city controlled by the Russians, which the Ukrainians have been pushing to try and get. If they have cut off those troops, they say they're now negotiating a surrender with them. We're also getting reports that now Ukraine is pushing to retake and claiming they've retaken certain settlements in the eastern Donbass, places that really just a few weeks ago were captured by the Russians. And then back to the northeast, that huge breakthrough over the weekend when really Ukrainian forces smashed through the lines and captured a massive amount of territory right up there near the second biggest city, Kharkiv.
And Tom, we've been looking at the map while you've been talking. It is still there's a lot of territory still under Russian control. And I'm wondering about this very large area up there, that big blue blotch right there. As Tom just told us, 5 days the Ukrainians have taken that back, and Russians have just been fleeing this very effective, skilled advance. And I want to know what you can tell us about the people who've been living there under Russian occupation. Now that they're liberated by their national government, well, what have you been seeing? Well,
the first thing to note, really, Terry, is that these people have been living under Russian occupation for months. We're seeing videos released by the Ukrainian military of people coming out and greeting them and embracing them. We're also learning that the Ukrainian authorities are digging up dead bodies in certain places, newly liberated territories. More war crimes investigations are now underway. The Ukrainians say that those will be properly investigated. And again, it looks like grim news on the face of it. And then also significantly, what we're seeing is significant amounts of military hardware captured by the Ukrainians. It looks like the Russians simply fled and they left huge numbers of tanks and massive amounts of ammunition.
I saw one wit on Twitter saying that Russia is now the leading supplier of arms to Ukraine. But let's take a breath. These are fast-moving events. Take a step back. What does this mean for the wider war? What's your understanding at this point, provisional as it might be, of what this leads to?
I think it definitely is a turning point to some extent. Momentum has now clearly swung in Ukraine's favour. And look at the timing. Look, it was only a few weeks or months ago that really heavy weaponry supplied by the United States and its allies began arriving on the front lines. And we saw the evidence that the Ukrainians were using those HIMARS rocket systems to strike targets behind enemy lines. And now the Ukrainians have the ability to go on the offensive. But, and it's a massive but, you know, Russia is a massive military power. It hasn't proved effective in this war so far, but that doesn't mean that the Russians can't regroup and try and break back in certain places. We'll have to wait and see.
It's just been amazing to watch. Tom Sufi-Burge, we're so glad you're there in Kyiv for us. This story falls off the front pages. You've been there throughout. Thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights.
Alrighty then. It's not a counteroffensive. It's a special military equipment gathering operation. America is very proud of you, Ukraine. Godspeed. Love the line about Russia now being Ukraine's largest arms supplier. Keep kicking ass, Ukraine. Ukraine says to Russia, you don't understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You are locked in here with me. Cool. Pretty typical stuff. Let's keep on rolling on through. We got one more. Oh, look at that. It's CNN again. So we got incredible Rhett, U.S. Army major on Ukrainian gains.
A rapid transformation of the battlefield in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian forces rolled through lines of Russian defenses and recaptured more than 3,000 square kilometers of territory. You're seeing right now some troops, I think some Ukrainian troops in some of the areas that they've retaken. Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons. Major, let's review what area the Ukrainians have taken back. We're talking about this area right here around Kharkiv. Everywhere you see in yellow there is territory the Ukrainians have taken back very recently. I want to push in here so we can get a better look. Again, this area in yellow, part of this new Ukrainian counteroffensive. How have the Ukrainians been able to do this, and what's the significance?
Yeah, over 1,000 square miles. It's an area that was lost since February, but now has been gained back. The key here is Izium. That was the main center of command and control. But they did a classic military pincer movement. They brought troops in from this direction. They brought troops in from this direction. They were able to chase the Russian military across the Oskil River here on the other side, on the eastern side of the Oskil River. A lot of it has to do with the artillery, because now our artillery can fire 50 kilometers over. They're now be able to chase that Russian military well past that Oskil River, giving them that advantage on their side of the river.
If we pull back out again and take a look at this area they've regained, how much further do you think they can push this, and what will that depend upon?
Ukraine has the initiative right now. It's so important. And you look at the Russian military, they're in almost full retreat. We've seen destroyed convoys, uneaten food. That to me is a bad sign when a military does that. So they're in full retreat. The question is, the Ukraine military can outrun their supply lines as well, and they're thinning out their troops here as the same token. So if Russia now goes and reinforces down to the south, then all that the Ukraine can do is really kind of hold that area. And I think that would be a win, and that would be good enough for now.
I do want to ask, because a lot of the focus, Ukraine had been saying they were staging this big autumn counteroffensive. We had thought, because of the way they had discussed and the way they were positioning some of their troops, it would happen down here in the south near Kherson. Does that appear to have been a feint to draw the Russians' attention so that they could attack up here instead?
I think it had a lot to do with it. I think that the Ukraine military was able to convince Russia that that's where the main battle was going to be. But Ukraine wanted a victory, and they knew they could get one in the north here, and they knew they could kick out the Russians in an area that they had before. So I think, classic economy of force mission. They hold the shoulder up here down on the south to make sure they don't lose that area while they have that counteroffensive going to the north. It is incredible that they were able to do this. A lot of it is because of that Western equipment.
And again, what I think is so surprising to people is the amount of territory they've been able to take so quickly, talking 30, 40 miles a day, which is something the Russians were only able to do at the very beginning of this conflict. So this is still a battle,
right,
or a series of battles. As we're talking about the war, long term, what will that hinge on?
Yeah, so Ukraine is winning, but they haven't won, and Russia is losing, but they have not lost. And a lot of it has to do with the way battles go. This is a lure of battle that says we want things to go quickly, and once we win this, then the war will now be over very quickly. I just don't think that's the case. This is now a people's war, where you're seeing war of attrition really taking place on both sides. This is now going to come down to industrial strength. Which side has got more industrial power? If Ukraine loses the support of its Western allies, then I'm afraid Russia still has more industrial power. They still can eventually win the war. But right now, the battles are going to Ukraine.
It's political. It's who can get their allies or who can muster the forces the most. Again, I just want to push in here one last time. Can the Ukrainians push this forward and maybe retake more of that territory still under Russian control?
Well, there's going to be obstacles here. There's river obstacles that if Russia is smart, they're on the defensive. Ukraine will have to have more men and material. And we know that Ukraine has suffered some casualties here. We're not really talking about that. So the question is, how will they be able to negotiate those obstacles? And in the artillery and on the weapon systems that we have, will put the Russian military much more on their heels, much further back. I think it would be a win for them if they could hold that line, keep them out of that oblast.
Right at the river where they are right now. Retired Major Mike Lyons, always great to see you. Thank you very much.
Blah, 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 blah. It's exhausting just watching this war in the media. I can only imagine how bad the conditions have been on the ground for Ukraine civilians. Yeah. I don't think we appreciate this enough. Ukraine was talking about the Kherson offensive for 2 months, promoting the Russians to send their best troops to the right bank of the Dnieper. Ukraine then bombed the bridges, making it impossible for all the equipment the Russians had brought there to leave, and also making it impossible for the Russians to supply the estimated 25,000 troops in Kherson. Then Ukrainians swiftly took the Kharkiv region back, and they're just waiting out the Russians in Kherson. This is brilliant on every level. Well done, Ukraine. So everybody's trying to make it sound like Ukraine is winning, or they just had like a good little hoorah. What about my Israel? Never thought we would see a man like this again. He will be remembered forever. Western weapons, training, and money was instrumental, but vastly superior tactics, logistics, leadership, heart and bravery, and patriotism is the deciding factor. All right, well, it sounds like things are kind of playing in Ukraine's favor from everything we've seen today. Let's take a little look-see at this article. Situation more difficult by the hour. Ukrainian forces break through to Russian border. So this was published today. This is USA Today. The Ukraine military stunning offensive gained momentum Monday, reclaiming several more northeastern villages and forcing the retreat of overwhelmed Russian troops from the region. A Russian-installed official in the Kharkiv region said Ukrainian forces outnumbered Russian troops by 8-1 and had broken through to the Russian border. Vitaly Ganchev told the state-owned Russia 24 television channel on Monday, the situation is becoming more difficult by the hour. Kiev's sudden surge comes after months of little movement, save for Russia's small gains in the Donbas region. The encouraging counteroffensive has lifted Ukrainian morale and prompted criticism within Russia of President Vladimir Putin's special military operation. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky marked 200 days since the war began by lauding the efforts of his military, which he said have liberated more than 3,700 square miles in the east and south in September. The world is impressed. The enemy is panicking, Zelensky said. Ukraine is proud of you, believes in you, prays for you, and is waiting for you. Important developments. The Ukrainian military said its troops had freed more than 20 settlements in 24 hours. The British Defense Ministry said Kiev's forces have captured territory at least twice the size of Greater London in recent days. The head of the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency said Monday that Ukraine and Russia appear interested in creating a security protection zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant and that talks are underway. The Pentagon said it has trained nearly 1,500 members of the Ukrainian armed forces on using military equipment supplied by the U.S., including 630 trained on M777 howitzers and 325 on HIMARS rocket launchers. Kharkiv counterattack highlights Ukrainian resolve and Russia's weakness, Pentagon officials say. Ukraine's tenacity, U.S. weapons, and Russian disarray have been major factors in the Ukrainian counteroffensive that has led to the recovery of significant territory in the northeastern Kharkiv region that had been controlled by the invading forces for months. Two senior Pentagon officials said Monday, the counterattack, which sent some Russian troops across the border and back into their country, forced them to abandon substantial amounts of armor as they fled, one of the officials said. That indicates Russian military officers lack command of their forces, said the official, who along with the other one briefed reporters on condition of anonymity. You know, I don't mind reading mainstream news sources. We don't have to agree with them. I mean, if anything, you can see what they're trying to project to people. It sounds like they want people to think that Ukraine is winning. So if anybody in chat has reason to think that like this is like a lie or this is a manipulation or Ukraine isn't really winning, I'm happy to hear that. But yeah, I don't really mind mainstream news sources. I just don't assume that they're telling the truth all the time. The headlong retreat of Russian forces reflects the enormous miscalculations President Vladimir Putin's government made about Ukrainian resolve. Western support in Russian military riven with weaknesses, including poor morale and logistics, the officials said. One of the key elements of Western aid has been the high-mobility artillery rocket systems supplied by the U.S., which have been used to destroy Russian command posts, ammunition depots, and logistics hubs more than 40 miles behind the front line, one of the officials said. Ukrainian forces also made moderate gains against Russian troops, the southern part of the country near Kherson, the other official said. Russian warplanes increased airstrikes over the weekend, hitting some civilian targets, but Ukrainian forces continue to defend their airspace, the official said. Dissent against Russian impossible war strategy seeps into media. Ramzan Kadyrov, the Moscow-backed leader of the Russian region of Chechnya, and Boris Nedzin, a former parliament member, were among prominent Russians to publicly criticize the war strategy. Mistakes were made, Kadyrov said in a Telegram post. He said that if a change in strategy is not made soon, I will be forced to turn to the leadership of the Ministry of Defense, the leadership of the country, to explain to them the situation that is really happening on the ground. Nadzin told NTV that Putin aides who convinced him the military would be fast and effective got it wrong. We're now at the point where we have to understand that it's absolutely impossible to defeat Ukraine using these resources and colonial war methods, Nedzin said. Some local political leaders have joined in the criticism, as municipal deputies from 18 districts in Moscow and St. Petersburg signed a petition posted online Monday calling for Putin's resignation. Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine, routing Russian forces. The Washington-based Institute for the Study of War issued an assessment Monday saying the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkiv was routing Russian forces and collapsing Russia's northern Donbas axis. Russian forces are not conducting a controlled withdrawal, but rather hurriedly fleeing southeastern Kharkiv Oblast to escape encirclement around Izium. Ukrainian forces have penetrated Russian lines to a depth of up to 45 miles in some places and captured over 1,150 square miles of territory in the past 5 days, since September 6th. More territory than Russian forces have captured in all their operations since April, the assessment says. The hasty retreat by Russian forces caught the attention of Ukrainian civilians such as Dmytro Hrushenko, a resident of recently liberated Zalzhinch, a small town near the eastern front line. The Russians were here in the morning, he told Sky News. Then at noon, they suddenly started shouting wildly and began to run away, charging off in tanks and armored vehicles. Let's see if we can find a quick clip from RT. Is Russia Today even allowed on YouTube anymore? Let's see here. I feel like they're not. It seems like it's not really allowed. No RT allowed. What's up with Sky News? Breaking news. All right, let's go to their website. Zelensky admits Ukraine is dependent on U.S. Well, that's not surprising. Ukrainian mayor announces hunt for collaborators. Norway skeptical about EU's gas price cap. Both left and right wing are getting the gender debate wrong. All right. Turkey to make a push for peace in Ukraine. Details a new suicide drone. All right. Well, anyway, I think we've covered this topic thoroughly. It's whatever, dude. I don't really care about the war that much, dude. Maybe I'll feel differently. I don't know, man. It's just kind of a Monday. You know what I mean? It's just kind of Monday today. Why birth rate in the U.S. is falling. Let's see what's going on.
Children are really expensive to raise in the United States. Economists say people may be taking that into consideration when deciding whether to have kids.
Even before recessions officially begin, people are already starting to pull back on their fertility. And that's really interesting because it suggests that, fertility is an indicator of people's confidence about the future. Economists expected there to be some decline in births during the Great Recession because we know that births tend to decline during tough economic times. But what's been really surprising is that births have continued to decline even throughout the recovery period. So if you look at the overall number of births, that number fell by about 13% between 2007 and 2019.
Despite this, it doesn't look like financial anxiety is actually deterring Americans from having children.
A big part of that is actually coming from decreases in unintended births. Unintended births fell by about 22% during that time.
It's true, though, that a growing share of U.S. adults who are not already parents say they are unlikely to ever have children. A Pew Research Center poll found that 44% of non-parents between 18 and 49 years old say it is not likely that they're going to have children one day. That's a 7 percentage point increase from Pew's results in 2018.
There are lots of reasons why people may or may not have children. And for some people, they really just don't want to. And there was nothing that a majority of the people said was a reason why they didn't think they'd have children in the future. Of the top ones, but they were all very close, statistically speaking, were medical reasons, financial reasons, and just not having a partner. No one reason sort of stood out as sort of the reason that people are saying they might not have children.
Ann Davidman is a marriage and family therapist who helps people get clear on whether they actually want children. She calls herself a parenthood clarity mentor.
I would say the most common fears are fear of regret, fear of making the wrong decision. Financial hesitancy does come up, but it is not the most common fear, because if somebody really wants something and they know why they want it, you're going to face the obstacles in front of you. I have no doubt there are people that start from a place of, I can't afford to have children, I'm not having children. And that's it. They're not going to give it more thought than that. But when people take time to figure out what they want and they know why they want it, they may decide not to become a parent because of finances. My guess is that wouldn't be the only reason.
Now economists are monitoring how the pandemic, along with the threat of a recession, could impact people's decisions to have children.
I think of the millennial cohort as being sort of doubly unlucky. The Great Recession happened early in their fertile years, so that led to fertility delay. And then when they get to the end of their fertile years, when they might be...
Soy! Don't forget the soy, sweetie.
Making up some of those births, that's when we had COVID. They're a cohort for whom we are seeing lower completed fertility as they reach the end of their fertile years. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens now with Gen Z beginning their fertile years during the COVID pandemic, and what happens over the next 2 decades in terms of their economic well-being, what's happening with the political environment, the environment. Those things are going to affect their fertility choices.
Cool. Let's see what the comments have to say. I chose not to have kids by my mid-teens. I didn't want the responsibility. Now at 61, I'm so glad I made that decision. A lot of people my age are financially bailing out their adult kids or raising grandkids. Good for you, little buddy. And now your lineage is fucking over. Yup. Cool. I live in a developing Asian country where birth rates and teen pregnancy are very high. During high school, we were brainwashed by our teachers and school principals to study first and have kids later in life. And guess what? I'm a 27-year-old engineer now, still child-free, and I've lost my interest in any form of intimate relationship after learning how hard it is to save money and earn for a living. Based incel... Or I guess he's a volcel, right? Kids are expensive. You don't need PhD to understand that income inequality, economic downturn and inflation will not help. There is a cost associated with having kids. As a woman with one child, having children is a lot of work. Aside from financial burden, the time and energy is crazy for working parent. Pick up, drop off from school and activities, doctor visits, eating, education, entertainment. I do not have a full night's sleep since becoming a mom. Plus, the U.S. is lack of community like other cultures. The parents would be struggling for the caring of children. Guys, something changed in our generation. Okay, we've come at this topic from a number of different angles. I think there's kind of this underlining tone of like, why would I choose this topic? It's because women aren't sleeping with me. The birth rate's declining because you don't want to be with me. You only want Chad. We'd fix the declining birth rate, ladies. If only you were with me. Nah, something changed, man. There was something about the United States for the baby boomer generation, and I think Gen X to a lesser extent. Gen X started feeling it in the 90s, but something died. Something's just not the same anymore. People's ability to fall in love, people's ability to meet. I'd say if somebody held a gun to my head and I had to answer, it's a combination of the changing demographic. I'm not trying to be racist, but our parents grew up in like 80% white United States. That demographic has shifted rapidly. There's just some sort of a cultural reality where it's like things aren't as friendly. So there's that, and then there's the obvious elephant in the room, the internet, sorry Bud says, and yeah, it's just like not human anymore. The technological society is just inhuman, and it's very sad. I feel very bizarre today, you guys. I just feel like today is a NPC day. This should be National NPC Day, bro, because everything just feels kind of like empty and meaningless, and I don't know what to say, guys. I don't know how to fix the problems in the world. I'm deep in this life. It was a long, lonely 20s, and something tells me it's going to be a long, lonely 30s, assuming I even fucking make it very long into my 30s. This has been a sad life, you guys. This is a sad generation. A lot of people in our generation aren't very happy. And then when you find people in our generation who did make it, they're very like territorial and competitive, and everybody gets married. Everybody has a job. All the normal people have jobs. All the normal people get married. You're just an incel. You just don't want to do anything. You just, it's like, okay, congratulations, you're happy. Like, happy people even don't seem very happy. It all seems like, I don't know, everybody's got to stick up their ass, or everything's competition. And I just think whatever it was that made this country a great country, even if, you start digging into the Reagan era, you start digging into Nixon, Watergate, civil rights, Black Panthers, you start digging into the history of this country, and more or less, like, ever since World War II, there's been problems, to put it lightly. But it just seemed like, in spite of that, there was a good life to be had here. And I know there's still people living good lives here, but the spirit of this country is dead, and the modern political set is half the country hates the other half, and I don't know how it's ever going to get better. I don't know how it's ever going to get better for me or for the world. And, if anybody cares, my plan is to just kind of like, I don't know, maybe find out how to get back out of my hometown and start a new life somewhere. Got to tell you, man, starting over and over again. I started a new life at 18, started a new life at 24. It just gets to a point where it's like, how many times can you start a new life? Or like, when is it too late? Or to me, it feels like if you ain't where you wanted to be by the time you're in your 30s, I mean, a lot of people want to go ahead and say that that's too late. But of course, everybody's like, oh, dude, your life just starts when you're 30. And I don't know, man. I'm tired. I'm worn down. I've been wanting for a long time. I've been lacking for a long time. And I think a lot of men feel that way. And Of course, in this topic that we're covering now, people aren't going to acknowledge that there's like a mass of men that have left the dating market. Because it seems like society's instinctual reaction is to just like shame those men. And I think underneath the shaming is like they want men to rise up. You know, they want men to take their place back. They want you to work harder. They want you to do things to get back in the game. But it's not happening, bro. There's more incels. The black pill's getting bigger. More men are leaving the dating market. More people are talking about hypergamy. Oh, I'm really going to look forward to smoking some weed today. I didn't smoke any weed or play drums today. I mowed the lawn, and I don't know about you guys, but today's a good day for me to try to check in with my comfy self. I need to try to get cozy today. Things are just feeling fucking bleak. Because it is too expensive to have kids. Like, we can barely take care of ourselves more, so affording to raise kids. And that's the funny thing is, like, even if we weren't all like fucking struggling with women, if we could date women, then there's also economic problems. Like, most of these people are talking about economic shit. Like, forget about the fact that a lot of guys can't even get dates, dude. In this comment section, people who are not having children to protect those children from hardships or already have a good parent mind set up. If you guys ever want children, please adopt. There are so many beautiful babies who just want love and a good parent like you. All right, moving on. December 6, 2021. The declining U.S. birth rate comes as no surprise.
New insights into how the state of this country may be influencing a record number of Americans against having children. Pew Research polled people between the ages of 18 and 49. When asked if they will ever have kids, 44% said it is either unlikely or not too likely. Here's the thing. When Pew asked that question in 2019, only 37% felt that way. For the past 6 years, the CDC reports birth rates across the country have been dropping. And last year, a historic record low per capita, a 4% decline in births. Pew asked people who said they don't want to have kids why, and a majority said they just don't want to, which, I appreciate that no is a full. Even Morgan Stanley is worried about it, telling investors, quote, the movement to not have children owing to fears over climate change is growing and impacting fertility rates.
Fears over climate change. Climate change. There's this great vegan pizza spot across the street. We should totally go. It's environmentally conscious.
Quicker than any preceding trend in the field of fertility decline. It's also the reality that Congress still can't bring us into the modern age when it comes to parenting and caregiving. This pandemic revealed it. Parents, mostly moms, tossed from the workforce, either let go or forced out to take care of children or sick family.
Mostly moms been tossed from the workforce. I immediately imagined like some super hyper like 50s, some guy in a suit with a cigar. Hey, sweetie, you been working here, huh? Not anymore. Tossing moms out into the street. No, my job. Yeah, sweetie, don't forget to clean out your desk, see? Guy with a big cigar like throws him in the street and then pours the contents of their desk like all over the fucking street with a cigar. Yeah, and don't come back, see?
Some parents forced to become teachers. Producer who helped write this script did so as he watched his 2-year-old at home because his daycare closed for COVID protocols. If a deadly pandemic is not scary enough, think about how we now have a second generation of kids attending active shooter drills at schools. Yet Congress has yet to address gun violence through legislation. And then there's the whole just affording a kid thing. Millennials hold just 5% of the nation's wealth, unlike the boomers before them who held about 21% of the nation's wealth at the same age. It's pretty impossible to buy a home to raise kids if you don't have the cash or collateral to make it happen. Millennials.
Okay, wait, what was that statistic? Share of national wealth at ages 25 to 40. Wait, what does that mean? Share of national wealth. Okay, so boomers had 21% of the national wealth from 25 to 40, and now millennials have 5%. Dude, this is becoming like a fucking prison country. Like, all the men are sexless, and we don't have any money, and people who like can get relationships like don't have any fucking money, and this shit's just depressing, dude. And I'm tired of feeling like I'm a conspiracy theorist or something. It's like, look, there's just a lot of guys who just couldn't get shit in this society, and with women, I feel like they're just not as feminine as they used to be, man. And that's of course met with like anger and, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, incel. It's like, bro, I just feel like that hunter, women are becoming hunters. They're hunting for the chads. There's something like testosterone about it. It's like, yeah, let's get drunk and let's go hunt. We're going to hunt for the prime male. They're hunting. That's what men would do. Men would go hunt for the women. Now the women are hunting for the men. Where's Chad? It's masculine.
Them who held about 21% of the nation's wealth at the same age. It's pretty impossible to buy a home to raise kids if you don't have the cash or collateral to make it happen. Millennials also facing mountains of student debt at such high rates that monthly minimums barely pay off the monthly interests. And while student debt forgiveness was in the Biden agenda, Democrats...
Why do I feel like this is the beginning of a Batman movie or something? Hey, a city that wants to be good. The millennials only have 5%. It's wrong. It's like, is Batman going to come save the fucking day or something?
Had to cut it from the spending bill to lower the price tag so it would pass. So millennials putting off kids until college is paid off, well, they keep waiting. As of now, paid family leave could still happen, but already it's been cut down to just 4 weeks. Might be axed from the final spending bill entirely. That is right. We gave the world a walk on the moon and the iPhone, but we can't give folks a few weeks off with their kid. Long and short of all of this, younger Americans are opting out of kids because the reality of the current moment seems untenable and because the future is more uncertain than ever. And that should alarm us all.
A city that wants to be good. We used to get married and have kids. The city. All right. They're upset because we won't create more workers for them. No, it's just fucking sad because this country, people used to be happy and have kids and everything used to be okay. One of my nieces, after watching what her two sisters went through while pregnant and being told how their pregnancies had been, said no to having children. She thought her mother and I would be upset by that choice. We are not. Boomers opposes affordable health care and education, opposes universal child care, wants a $0 minimum wage, defends 80-hour work weeks, and posts entry-level jobs requiring a PhD, 10 years of experience as an Apple CEO, and unpaid internships. Also boomers. Why aren't people having kids? The eternal boomer. You know what I've been realizing since watching the memory hole, these old C-SPAN videos from like the 80s, there did seem to be you want to observe the intellectual left from the 70s and 80s, the kind of people calling out, the Bilderbergs, Trilateral Commission, Rockefeller, people taking shots at the CIA and stuff. It seems like it was intellectual leftists. And it seems, just trying to like put two and two together, I definitely think this modern radical left was an attack on the left. Because it's easy, I think a lot of us have been absorbed by the far right movements and we've learned to see things from a much more conservative perspective. But I at least think that the left was a lot more conscious of things that mattered in the 70s and 80s. They were a lot more anti-establishment, a lot more anti-government, trying to find reasonable solutions to these kind of problems. And I definitely think that this like pussy hat, far radical left feminism, radical critical race theory, I think that was an attack on the intellectual left. I don't know. I don't really have like a way of completing that thought, but it would be interesting homework to take a look at like the more moderate left and like what they were about and what they were doing through the 70s and 80s, because yeah, that's just kind of what I've been picking up on, is a lot of these like suit and tie guys trying to tear apart the establishment. They identified as liberals, they identified as leftists, and I definitely think that they were misled and they didn't see the big picture, but I think they kind of got smashed and replaced by these pussy hat liberals. All right. I don't blame them. It gives me anxiety every time my son goes to school. If I didn't already have children, I would be one of those to not wanting have with the crap going on in the world. Sad. That's my dream. A fishing campaign vacation with Drake, Alden, Shelton. Come on down. Fresh fish to be had all around. Declining birth rates will cause economic problems in the near future. You should be working 60 hours a week. Neat.
Experts say there is another factor that will be a drag on the economy for years to come: the low birth rate.
Yeah, a smaller workforce will mean less money for social safety nets. News 6's Troy Campbell.
Oh, shit. Chatty!
A smaller workforce will mean less money for social safety nets. News 6's Troy Campbell has the story all new at 11.
Following the pandemic, economists say parents and people who want to become parents are facing increases in prices all across the board. And they say that affects their decision on whether or not to bring a new child into the family.
Food is getting very high. Gas definitely is getting very high.
Parents at Lake Eola Wednesday evening, a concern many of them say is top of their list: rising costs with inflation.
Definitely, I think it would be harder bringing in a child into this world right now because prices are going up. People are losing their homes. They barely have somewhere to stay.
Take a look at this graph from the Florida Department of Health, showing the state's birth rates trend during the past 2 decades, showing an obvious decline. This map of the state shows Central Florida counties Polk, Osceola, and Orange have a higher birth rate than Seminole, Brevard, Volusia, and Lake counties. UCF Associate Professor Melanie Goldie says with birth rates lowering across the country and in Florida, the trend will continue of a decline in working-age people. She says one of the first effects we will see is when Social Security funds are expected to run low in the 2030s.
If you look at some of the details in some of the Social Security reports, one of the big factors of why they worry that Social Security will go, it's not really bankrupt, but it will no longer be funded by the money that they have.
Goldie says the lower birth rate in 2022 will have long-term effects, saying in a couple of decades, there could be a shortage of young adult workers.
The pandemic led to a lot of job loss, particularly in-person jobs were changed. So people that were working in face-to-face jobs were all of a sudden either remote working or maybe not working at all.
Families we spoke with also say rental rate increases affect families with more kids since they need more space. The CDC also says 2020 data shows that women in their 30s who are more financially stable are now more likely in the U.S. to have a child than women in their 20s. In Orlando, Troy Campbell, getting results, News 6.
Wait, I wasn't paying attention. What did you say?
Women in their 30s who are more financially stable are now more likely in the U.S. to have a child than women in their 20s.
Autism hype.
In Orlando, Troy Campbell, getting results, News 6.
Yeah, and this is something that the sweeties have a real hard time with. Like, girls, your baby-making factory is just more optimal in your 20s. I'm not like an expert on that, okay? I'm not an expert on that. Let's just like introduce ourselves to the elephant in the room here. There's all these bitter incel guys who really want to like press this point, like that women are fucking up by having kids in their 30s. But I do kind of feel like that's reality, you know? It's just, I think my mom had me when she was like 24. My mom was about 24, 25 when she had me. Yeah, things have just changed, and It's not the end of the world for women to have kids in their 30s, but it's not really optimal from my understanding. I'm starting to think that it is no coincidence that the Supreme Court got rid of Roe versus Wade now. They want more consumers. Yeah, I've heard people mention that. The government should focus on better wages for all people. Then people will be more inclined to bring kids into this horrible situation. What do people have to say to that? Governments always do what they should do. If they don't do what would make logically sense to you, that's because they don't want to. They want a smaller population since it's easier to control and needs less resources equals more for the elitists. In the past, people were needed in the workforce, but that has changed. Nice try. Capitalism will always blame the baby for your poverty, never for underpaying their employees a fair wage. Your wage is just for one mouth. Yeah, but in your scheme, there is a flaw. If there is less people, then there will also be less customers who will buy your commodities. What is the point of being elitist if there are no poor people? Moreover, who will protect them against immigrants who will replace their former nation? No one cares how many people buy your commodities. The only difference between a 7 billion population and a 70 billion population is that the latter consumes 7 times the resources. That's literally the only difference now. And there will always be poor people. The aim of the elitists is a world with 500 million people on the planet. That's more than enough room for at least 495 million poor, second-class citizen China style. And the people we are talking about are using immigrants as weapons. Who protects them from their own weapon, you ask? It's called gated communities and private security. Kind of based, to be honest, kind of woke take there. All right, let's take a look at this article. Looks like we're in line for kind of a short day today. Yeah, guys, damn, I'm just trying to keep it going around here. I think it's really important that I start trying to get out of bed earlier. Things just feel bleak. Life feels kind of bleak. Is the U.S. birth rate falling? Elon Musk warns of population collapse. Oh no, not Elon Musk. Elon Musk posted 2 tweets yesterday outlining his concerns about declining birth rates in the U.S. So this is Newsweek.com. One of Musk's tweets included a line graph from the Wall Street Journal visualizing the U.S. total fertility rate from the 1940s to today, with total fertility rate being an estimate of the average number of babies a woman would have in her lifetime. Yikes. Yeet. Damn. So wait. What? So that's 1989? Wow. I don't really understand what this graph is saying, honestly, but it doesn't look good. Yikes. All right. In order for a generation to replace itself, that rate needs to be about 2.1. The graph clearly shows a large spike to around 3.7 in the post-war baby boom era of the 50s, before sharply declining below 2. The rate recovered somewhat up about 2008 before falling again, and today the rate appears to be about 1.6 according to the graph. USA birth rate has been below minimum sustainable levels for 50 years, Musk wrote. The tweet had gained more than 130,000 likes and nearly 20,000 retweets as of Wednesday morning. Previously, Musk has argued that the environment would be fine even if the world's human population doubled. It is well known that the U.S. birth rate is declining and has been since 2008, a fact observed by the U.S. Census Bureau last year. Hey, that's about when I graduated high school. Wow, it was fucking over a year before I even graduated. Good thing I went to music school. Economists have referred to this decline as something of a mystery. The 2008 decline coincided with the global financial crisis of that year, which led to one of the worst U.S. recessions ever. However, the rate did not increase in the years that followed, even when the economy improved. In fact, as of 2020, the U.S. birth rate was 55.8 births per 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 44, a decline of almost 20% from the rate of 69.3 in 2007, according to a EconoFact article written earlier this year by 3 college and university economists. The decline is present across many demographics. Births have fallen among women with and without college degrees, among married and unmarried women, and among white, black, and Hispanic women, the economists wrote. The question is what effect a declining birth rate has and how damaging it can be. That depends on who you ask. Human beings are obviously essential for society. Today's babies will be staffing the hospitals and nursing homes for tomorrow. They'll pay the taxes that keep the government running, and they'll buy the homes and invest in the stocks that the adults of today have put all their savings into. A lack of babies is linked to an aging population in which there are fewer and fewer people of working age, leading to a shortage of qualified workers and supply and demand economies that can't fill the roles to supply that demand, leading to higher labor costs and declining business expansion. Investopedia states, if you have low or negative population growth, you can have a shrinking population, and that's led to weaker GDP growth in the past. Carolyn Harnett, a demographer and sociologist at the University of South Carolina, told Popular Science last year. Let's look at the comments. The burning hellscape wording is a bit silly. Still, I do think there's cause for concern about the future, enough so that I opted not to have kids. All right. It's a long comment. Let's look at some short comments. As long as Musk's ego, which he apparently believes is holding up to the world, doesn't collapse, we should all be just fine. No. I remember having some really weird teachers. Okay. Oh, these comments violated the policy. And they got responses, okay? Economists have referred to this decline as something of a mystery. Hello, McFly. Abortion of 60 million since 1973. Why would this be a mystery? Wrong. Abortion has been legal since 1973. Yeah, I think it's something else too. Something that clearly none of these sources want to talk about. Feminism, incels, black pill, 60% university attendees being women, half of men at UK universities being single. Okay, boyos. Well, let's go ahead and finish it up with Mr. John Piper and Tim Keller wrestling with sanctification.
Thank you, Tim, for taking whatever time we can squeeze in here.
Great, yep.
We're at the Redeemer offices here in New York. I don't think I've been here on this floor anyway before, so thank you. We're going to do some other things together tonight, but right now we want to talk about sanctification and holiness. And it's in the air, especially as it relates to gospel and motivation.
Yeah. Yes.
So how do you like to talk about it? I'm going to just give you a free menu right here to just say, when you consider sanctification and holiness, what's a helpful way to talk about it? What is it? Why is it important?
Well, you would usually say that I absolutely believe in what the Reformed people call the third use of the law, that now that I'm a Christian and I've been saved by the gospel, I'm still obligated to obey the law, but the law demands both inner holiness, inner change, as well as external righteousness and behavior. And I say what the gospel does is it gives me especially a new, profoundly new motives. That before I understood the gospel, I might have tried to be moral and virtuous, but I think what Edwards would say in Nature, True Virtue is that it's basically selfish. It's essentially, I may be obeying God, but I'm obeying for myself. And I'm actually not obeying for God's sake. I'm obeying for my sake because I want to get something. That's radically different once you understand the gospel. My motivations now aren't fear. They're desire to delight Him and please Him. That means I'm essentially, I have essentially positive motivations to do it. It means my obedience will be more unconditional because I won't be looking so much at what am I getting out of it right now. I'm doing it just to please the one who saved me and to honor the one whose character I aspire to imitate. I think Walter Marshall's Gospel Mystery of Sanctification says it this way, that you need the comforts of the gospel in order to fulfill the law. So that's pretty much what I would say too.
Yeah, so when you talk about the third use of the law, or holiness, external righteousness, internal purity of heart,
yes.
right motives,
right.
What is it out here that we're conforming to? It's surely not the legal codes of the Old Testament. When you say law,
yeah, right.
I mean, the New Testament talks about the law of Christ,
right? Right.
So what are you sending people?
Well, you know, there might be a little difference between us. I mean, the Presbyterians sometimes don't make the distinction like they should. But generally, it's the difference. The Mosaic Law had the ceremonial law involved, which we do believe was fulfilled in Christ. Not so much it was abrogated, but that Christ is fulfilling it. When I believe in Christ now, I don't need to go through the washings, and I'm clean in Him. So in that sense, it's been fulfilled in Christ. The moral nub of the law, which is restated in the New Testament as the law of Christ, is continuous with the Old Testament 10 Commandments, and that's still binding on us. But I've just been reading through Calvin on this in his Institutes. He says every one of the 10 Commandments he believes actually also enjoins an inner heart attitude as well. So thou shalt not kill does mean love your neighbor. And so that's the reason why he would say to obey the law means to look for an inner change in my heart as well.
Right. So we love the doctrine of justification.
We do.
Which is God's imputing an alien righteousness to us
right.
through faith alone. Faith alone.
Yes.
And then the Westminster Standards say the faith that justifies is never alone, but is always accompanied by all its graces.
Yes.
So what's in your mind, how is justification imperative different from sanctification imperative? Are they both necessary for final salvation? And if so, are they necessary in the same way? I mean, I think a lot of people stumble over, okay, I understand I'm a sinner, I need forgiveness, I'm a sinner, I need righteousness imputed to me. Okay, I believe, I trust. And then this preacher stands up, Piper or whoever, and he says, there's a holiness without which you won't see the Lord. Now, I take that passage to mean there are behaviors and attitudes that if you persist in, you go to hell. And they say, I thought I was justified by faith. So what do you respond to a person like that?
I go back to what you just said. You're saved by faith alone, but not by a faith which remains alone. I think as a pastor, I think I've been able to clarify this for people when I say, you're really saved by faith, not by how sanctified you are, but if you're not getting sanctified, then you don't have saving faith. Okay. Saving faith will issue in it, and so you might say sanctification are the signs of salvation, but not the cause. Again, recently been rereading Walter Marshall on this, and he says there is a danger of saying you're justified by faith, but you're sanctified by works, and to teach it in such a way that people essentially feel like I'm saved, meaning my sins are forgiven, but now it's up to me to live a good life, which is almost half of justification. It's like my sins were put on Christ, but now in some way I have to weave a righteousness. I'm given a chance to start over. And I do think an awful lot of simple Christians do think of justification like that. It's just the pardon, and now sanctification is what I do to keep God happy with me. Yeah. And I think we have to say, no, your justification doesn't mean imputed righteousness. Sanctification is a sign that you've got the saving faith. I think that's how I've been doing it.
And to use the words of James, it's a sign because if your faith isn't producing a change, isn't producing love, it's not real.
Right.
Which
Right.
is, and that would be Galatians 5:6.
Right.
Neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but faith working through
Right.
love. So, can you get at the psychological dynamics
Well,
of how that works? Faith working through love.
Yeah, let's actually let's spend time on that. That's very important. So what I'm about to tell you, I don't believe gets to the bottom of it. But some years ago, I remember talking to a woman who wasn't a believer yet. This is only one part of the answer. She wasn't a believer yet, but she was just coming to grips with the idea I'm saved by grace and faith, not by my works. And she said, I used to go to church years ago, and when I came up in that church, I never heard that you were saved by grace and faith. I always heard you were saved by being a good person. She says, why haven't I heard this? Why don't more churches teach it? And fortunately, by some wonderful providence, most ministers, obviously we immediately are so happy to have a question because we can hold forth. But for some reason I said, well, why do you think? And she says, well, this is scary. I said, what? And he says, if you're saved by works, there's a limit to what God can ask of you. You're like a taxpayer. You've paid your taxes, you've paid your dues, and he could ask certain things of you, but not anything. But he said, if I'm really saved by grace because of what Jesus has done, there's no limit to what he could ask of me. And my obedience would have to be unconditional. And I looked at her and I said, you realize that most people, when they first hear that you're saved by grace alone and not by works, think, well, this is great. That means I can live any way I want.
Mm-hmm.
But see, for her, she was already, by the way, she probably was saved at that point. I look back, I think she just hadn't professed the faith yet because she understood the gospel so well. And she said, psychologically, if you realize that you've been saved by grace, it means I owe him everything, which of course you're not your own, you're bought with a price. And see, that's one psychological thing that has to happen. Yeah. You're looking at your justification, you're looking at your free justification and costly to God, okay? And immediately says, I don't have the right to make these calls. I've got to do what the Lord says. I mean, that's one. And it's motivated by joy. It's not like, oh, I got to obey.
Okay, let me press on that. You said we owe him everything. So now I've used the phrase the debtor's ethic as a bad thing.
I know.
Actually, I know and I've heard you say. I mean, I didn't hear you say, but somebody told me you said. I'm not sure I know what Piper means.
That's right.
When he says that, and so right here is where I heard a little glimmer. Now I know you well enough to say you're not a debtor's ethic guy, but a person could take that phrase, I owe him everything, and now say, okay, in the past,
now
all of grace.
Him.
Exactly.
You're right. It needs
him.
clarification. There's a place in the Institutes, which I read 2 nights ago, because I've been reading them at night, where Calvin said, because we're so blind that we should obey God just because of the beauty of the good. You'd like that term. But because we're so blind, God actually has to give us rewards and punishments. And he then says, by the way, this is Book 2, Chapter 7. He says, we actually are debtors to His Majesty. Now here he's talking about the fact that we just owe him everything. He says, the payment of a debt deserves no reward. Therefore, we actually he shouldn't have to say, if you obey me, I'll bless you and do things. And yet he gives up his right. Now see, he uses the term debt there. And you got to take a look at that at some point. And he doesn't say debt to his grace, debtor to grace. He says debt to His Majesty. But then he says, we should just be doing it out of the beauty of who He is and what He is. In the gospel, I see the beauty of what He's done for me, which is His love and sacrifice. Just as His creator, I see the beauty of His holiness. And that should be what I mean when I say owe Him. It means He deserves it. I want to say He deserves it because of the beauty and the greatness of who He is. Now, the trouble with the owe thing, I agree, is it looks like He's done something and I have to pay Him back. Rather than say, great music deserves praise. A noble deed just attracts and evokes praise. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to get at. So
Right. 2 things are in my mind, Jocelyn, for which one should come out next. One is to clarify how to help people not go the wrong route of O.
Yeah.
And the other is to lean on what you mean when you say it's debtor to His Majesty, or it's just sheer fitness to respond a certain way.
That's a better word.
To beauty. That's Edward's language.
Yes. It's fitness. Otherwise, you're not seeing him for who he is.
Let me go to the first one, and if I remember, I'll come back to the next one.
I like fitness better than debt, by the way.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it.
So when Paul says, by the grace of God I am what I am, and His grace toward me was not in vain, but I worked. Okay, now that's what I want. I think that's holiness there.
Mm-hmm.
I did good things. I did the right thing. I worked harder than any of them. And then he says, nevertheless, it was not I, but the grace of God that was with me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way I picture that is, Paul received grace. By the grace of God, I am what I am. So grace has come into his life. It's awakened a new person. It's given him these desires. And now, as he contemplates, how shall I respond? He says, I'm going to work my tail off for Jesus.
Right.
And then he says, but it wasn't me working my tail off. So as far as debt goes, it goes like this. So he says, I'm going to take a step for Jesus. And then he says, I took that step by the grace of Jesus. It wasn't I, but, and so every step you take in obedience to Jesus, you're going deeper in debt.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
So being a debtor to grace, I think is just a wonderful phrase. As
Right.
long as you don't ever think it's payback, because you can forever. I think forever and ever we go deeper.
And I also think that when you say debtor to grace, it does get across some idea that He's done all this for me. It now is fitting for me to live for Him. That's what this woman was saying. That I have to take the conditions off because He's done everything for me. Now I owe Him everything. But then there has to be another shoe that drops. Otherwise, it's repayment. I agree, and I actually like the idea. It's unfitting. It's unfitting for me to receive something from someone else and then not respond in a fitting way.
Right, but fitness, I think, with the average person, just doesn't go down. They're not an aesthetically driven person.
Well, praise fits. I mean, that's what Psalm 33. Well, there's a place in Psalm 33 when it talks about praise Him with skillful songs. It's fitting.
Yeah,
praise fits Him.
Totally agree.
Oh, a couple of wild and crazy guys there. All right, guys. Oh boy, another week, another Monday. Maybe I'll come back tonight for a chill stream or something. I don't know, dude. I'm feeling pretty blank today. Kitties want to go outside. I'm making chicken tonight. Haven't gone to McDonald's in a while. It's probably for the best. Yeah, this diet, dude. I don't know, man. I might just need to quit while I'm ahead. I'm just very curious about it, but yeah, you have to have like 20 grams of fat. It's like the idea is you can have infinite carbs and it's fine, but if you have more than 20 grams of fat, then it's not. And I don't know. I like fat, dude. I like meat. I don't even know. I just try to switch it up sometimes. It's all because of that fucking one Durian Ryder video where he was talking about Andrew Tate. Probably just time to go back to the diet I was doing before. That diet wasn't that great either. It's so hard for me to like get the optimal diet going. Fucking Ice Poseidon, dude, I'm doing 4 hours of cardio a day. It's like, yeah, he's got all his trainers and his money, and it's pretty hard for me to work out that much, and I've been doing great working out for me, but I don't know, dude. I just don't feel that motivated lately. Anyway, peace out, guys. God bless. Yeah, I think good chance we'll do a chill stream tonight, but I'm going to hang out with the cats outside for a bit and do some other stuff first. Anyhow, God bless you. Thank you for being here, and